Halloween had always been my favorite holiday, not for the candy, not for the costumes, not even for the excuse to watch movies where everyone runs upstairs when they clearly should have run out the front door. No, I loved it for the mischief, the atmosphere, the sense that, for one night, the world was allowed to be weird. That's why, when I moved into Maplewood, the kind of small town that takes pumpkin carving more seriously than federal elections, I knew Halloween was going to be special. My neighbors went all out, 12-foot skeletons, fog machines, candy corn lights strung across every bush. Even the mayor dressed up as Dracula every year and demanded people call him Count Henderson. So when October 31st rolled around, I was ready. I had a bowl of candy big enough to feed a small army, a costume that was half vampire, half pirate of Vamprit, thank you very much, and a front porch decorated with just the right balance of spooky and inviting. But then the pumpkins started screaming. It began around 8 p.m. just as the trick-or-treaters reached peak sugar frenzy. I was handing out fun-sized chocolate bars when the jack-o'-lantern on my porch let out a blood-curdling shriek, high-pitched, ear-splitting, definitely not part of the lead candle settings. The kids screamed, I screamed, the pumpkins screamed again. Then, silence. I said, staring at the pumpkin's jagged grin. Happy Halloween. The kids grabbed their candy and bolted. I chalked it up to faulty electronics. Maybe the neighbor's haunted sound effects machine had gone haywire, but then the second pumpkin screamed, and the third. Soon, my porch sounded like a chorus of tortured vegetables. Worse, they started talking. Return the seed. One of them growled. What seed? I yelped. The seed. This was not in the homeowner's manual. I did what any responsible adult would do. I ran to my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was 90 years old, sharp as a tack, and had lived in Maplewood since dinosaurs roamed Main Street. If anyone knew why pumpkins were auditioning for a horror movie on my porch, it would be her. She listened patiently as I explained the situation, her eyes twinkling like she'd heard it all before. She said finally. The pumpkin curse. I blinked. Excuse me. Legend says that if you carve pumpkins without returning the seeds to the earth, the gourds will rise up in protest on Halloween night, screaming, mostly, sometimes biting. Biting. She nodded. Best give the seeds back before they get angry. You wouldn't like them when they're angry. Naturally, I had thrown the seeds in the trash days ago. And of course, the trash had been picked up that morning, which meant my porch full of pumpkins was now my porch full of very angry pumpkins. That night, as the trick-or-treaters dwindled and the fog rolled in, the pumpkins grew louder, their carved faces twisted into frowns. One spat out a candy wrapper, another tried to roll down the steps after a teenager dressed as Spider-Man. By 10 p.m., the whole street had gathered outside my house. What's going on? Shouted Count Henderson, his Dracula cape flapping dramatically in the wind. My pumpkins are possessed. I shouted back. The pumpkins screamed in agreement. Panic spread. Some neighbors ran. Others pulled out their phones to livestream Pumpkinpocalypse 2023. I considered making a run for it. But where do you go when your enemies are literally growing in your front yard? That's when the biggest pumpkin, the one he'd been so proud of carving into a masterpiece, shuddered, cracked, and split open. From inside, something slimy and glowing began to crawl out. The crowd gasped. The seed returns, bellowed the pumpkin chorus. A glowing, pulsing, slime-covered orb rolled onto the porch. It looked like a cross between an alien egg and a radioactive avocado. I said, is that my seed? The pumpkins chanted, feed the seed. Now, I didn't know much about cursed gardening rituals, but I did know one thing. When glowing produce demands a snack, you'd better comply. So I did the only logical thing. I grabbed a fun-sized Snickers and placed it gently on the glowing orb. The pumpkins went silent. The orb absorbed the Snickers in one slurp, then pulsed happily. The pumpkins began to hum. I offered another candy bar. The orb slurped it too. Soon, I was tossing chocolate, gummies, candy corn, everything in my bowl onto the seed. Each time, it absorbed the sweets like a vacuum cleaner with a sugar addiction. Finally, with a satisfied glow, the orb burped. The pumpkins sighed in relief. Their twisted faces softened back into cheerful jack-o'-lantern grins. The glowing orb cracked, fizzled, and then poof vanished into thin air. Just like that, the curse was lifted. The crowd erupted in cheers. Kids danced. Neighbors clapped. Count Henderson declared it the best Halloween Maplewood had ever seen. Your sacrifice of candy has appeased the pumpkin spirits, Mrs. Thompson said, patting my shoulder. They'll let you live now. Gee, thanks, I muttered. From that night on, my house was famous. People came from miles around every Halloween to see the pumpkin house. Kids lined up, not for candy, but to hear the pumpkins sing. Apparently, once you've screamed your way through a curse, you develop a knack for show tunes. And me, I never threw away pumpkin seeds again. I planted them, watered them, and even fed them leftover candy. Because if there's one thing I learned at Halloween night, it's this: never underestimate the power of vegetables on a sugar high. The end.